All right, everybody. We are live for a special reaction video about Jordan Love's injury last night. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said about what happened last night. And first of all, like it was a phenomenal game, and it's just unfortunate what happened. And if nobody else knows, Jordan Love had an MCL sprain. He should be out 3 to 6. But the team is hoping 3 to 4. So we will definitely see what comes from that. And here, me and Steve are going to chat about what lies ahead for the Packers, and this will could definitely shape the playoffs. So
Yeah. So I did not watch any of the game. Um, I did see the play at the end, and when I saw it this morning before the news came out, I was thinking high ankle sprain. But
mhm,
even if it's a high ankle sprain as opposed to MCL, you're still looking at the same issue, right?
yeah,
So I think it's a pretty big deal for Green Bay. Um, this was a team that had high hopes, and when you look at their schedule, the it's kind of like Detroit's schedule, to be honest with you. The
yeah,
front part is a little bit easier than the back half. So, I think both teams were trying to look to take advantage of the front half of their schedules when they get into that tough part. So, looking at Green Bay, that's tough now. Like, you're playing Indianapolis next week,
mhm,
and you're definitely feeling less confident in that game now. Now that you don't have Jordan Love, he's out for that game. He's missing Tennessee. I still think Green Bay should be able to win that game, and then Minnesota was next, I believe, right?
yeah, I believe so because I know we
And
got Minnesota coming up soon.
Mhm.
Um,
So that's your three guaranteed games, right? That he's out.
mhm,
And other than that, I think you had. I looked quick, but you had like I think maybe like the Rams and the Texans, and then there was another team
we've
in
got
there,
at LA, home against the Cardinals, and then home
Cardinals.
against the Texans.
Yeah, that was the Cardinals. And so that's what you're looking at as a schedule is Green Bay. And I think going into the season, you're probably looking at that going. I think the Philly loss was, I think, being realistic. You're going, okay, I can see it. Neutral site, not necessarily a home game for anybody, but you're not
Right.
overly upset losing to Philly, especially
No.
with how Green Bay appeared to have looked last night. It was a competitive, good game that was back and forth. But I think Green Bay expected to beat Indy, beat the Titans, beat the Vikings. Maybe they lose to the Rams, but then you're expecting to beat the Cardinals and be
Right.
sitting there at 5-1 or 4-2. And and now he might miss the Texans game, which I think you were kind of hoping to win, and maybe you're at 5-2 after 7 games. And if he misses six, you know, Green Bay, I mean, if they can get to be 3-4, I think you're going to be happy. Um, as a team who I think was expecting to be sitting there at like 5-2 after seven,
Yeah.
to then go into the that back half of the schedule that's a lot tougher. And why it's a big deal too is that Rams game to me, for you guys and also for Detroit, um tomorrow night. It's big in the event that you're fighting for a wild card berth for with that team, because now that head-to-head tiebreaker is in play. And I think Green Bay was a team expecting to not have to worry about a tiebreaker if they were going for a wild card. um
Yeah. And I think that's going to be the huge thing that's going to, like you said, play a huge role with the playoff picture here. Because if Love misses 3 weeks, I mean, best case scenario, if he misses 3 weeks, comes back against the Rams, we're good. But to me, I think a lot of it just has to do with Malik Willis and how well he can get up to speed on the offensive scheme and everything. Because to be fair,
That
like he hasn't really played horribly in Tennessee. It's just I feel like the Titans kind of just threw him to the wolves too soon and then just gave up on him real quick. They didn't
yeah.
really give him a chance to develop, but as if you can really develop a quarterback behind Rand Tannehill, who his entire career in Tennessee was like, nope, giving it to Derrick Henry. Huh, yeah, I'm gonna pass him. Nope, Derrick Henry. But
Yeah, and
now
in
with him
Tanner
being in Green Bay to where we seemingly do very well with developing backup quarterbacks. It's just going to be really interesting to see how he can come around, get up to speed on this offense, and then how well he can perform. Because with the Colts, I mean, their defense is pretty solid. Their offense is pretty stout with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor.
and
Because that's
Pittman.
just a two-headed monster, and they've got a pretty decent receiving core that's pretty young.
Yeah. And it's
So
important, like for those who don't realize when you talk about Willis getting up to speed, he's been with the team for what, 2 weeks?
not even.
Like
Uh,
he
I
was
think before Love got injured last night, he was with the team for all of like 5 days.
because yeah, he was like last minute like preseason trade.
Hmm.
I think Green Bay looked at their backup quarterbacks in the preseason and went, "We don't like anybody here." And that's where they pulled that trigger for Malik Willis, which, you know, that's a big deal now, because you're not looking at a guy to come in and fill in week 10 for a game where he's had time to learn the playbook, learn the language, develop chemistry. You're looking for a guy to come in and fill in for multiple weeks. And, if Jordan Love only misses 3 games, you then question how limited he is.
Right.
Um, and I think that's going to be a question all year long too about, how limited is Jordan Love? Um, because he does have mobility to his game, and is that going to be taken from him? And if Green Bay were to slip, do they rush him back and maybe, cost themselves in that aspect? It's a very precarious situation for a franchise to be in when you're starting quarterback,
That you
and
just
your
gave an
future that
ass
you
load
just,
of money.
yep, gets a sprained MCL that, knee injury, as somebody who has had multiple knee injuries, they're very finicky.
Yeah.
So it's a sprain, and you're like, whew, at least it's not torn, which is true. But how much is he going to be limited by that sprain when he comes back? Is that going to linger in the back of his head? Um,
Right.
and as a team, how do you handle that? And sometimes it's one of those like, sometimes you almost wish it's a tear, so that
Yeah.
they don't do something stupid. And I know people would be like, Steve, why would you say that? Then your quarterback's guaranteed to be out for the year. Why I say that sometimes with sprains is, they say maybe Jordan Love misses 4 games and he comes back and he's limited, but that quad is weak, because of the healing. Now, granted, he's a professional athlete, but there is a certain amount of leg strength that you lose while that leg heals. I've torn my ACL
Hmm.
twice. In one of my injuries, I tore my ACL. I partially tore my MCL. I sprained the MCL or sprained the LCL, and I tore the meniscus. That was one injury right there. Boom. Done.
Right.
Um, and I was a collegiate cross country runner, so I mean, I was, a collegiate athlete, not at the level of, D1 or anything like that, but you do lose muscle mass, you do lose strength. And if he loses some strength in that knee and gets rushed back, what's worse for Green Bay is for him to then maybe tear the MCL in week 12. Uh, because not only is he gone for the year, he's probably missing part of next year.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
And so that's the worry that you have as a Packer fan with Jordan Love's injury is you're almost holding your breath all season long until you hear the words he's 100%. Um,
Yeah, and
and
that's.
with
Oh,
and
go
with
ahead.
an yeah, and I was gonna say with an MCL sprain, I don't think you're gonna get that unless you sit him for the full 6.
Right. And I think, like you said, I think that's definitely the huge worry here for me being a Packer fan is, you know, I know a lot of these players, they like to go out there and they just like to compete. Even if they're not 100%, they just want to compete. Because hell,
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers hurt his MCL a couple years back and it messed with him for 2 full seasons.
Yeah.
And then it finally healed after like the second or third off season, but he was not really the same quarterback. Like, yeah, he still put up insane numbers, but mobility wise, you could tell every time he'd drop back to or pass and plant that leg, he'd kind of cringe a little bit and then trying to just push off on that for throws or escape in the pocket. You could tell he was hampered by that injury, and especially with somebody that's going to be a little bit more mobile and more agile like Jordan Love and someone that's younger. You really got to put that into question here because, I mean, who's to say, like, let's say, best case scenario, I honestly don't think the Packers are going to, let's say he's out for 4 weeks. I don't see the Packers going 4-0 in that time. I honestly probably see us maybe going 1-3, 2-2. I think 2-2 at best. If we go 3-1 in that 4-game stretch, holy shit, I'm going to buy a lottery ticket because I don't
Yes.
see that happening.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I can see us beating the Titans. I can see us beating the Vikings. I do not see us beating the Colts. Their defense is too stout for that. Their offense is too good. We're probably going to have to put up some offensive numbers to beat Indianapolis. And then the Rams, that's at LA. The Packers never play well on the West Coast, ever. And then coming home against the Cardinals, we should beat them. They are terrible. They're a terrible team. We should be able to beat them with freaking Sean Clifford. But, like I said earlier, that just definitely goes to say about um, Malik Willis because now you've got to hurry up and get him up to speed. And I think, like you said, best case, you almost wish he just tore his MCL. But at the same time, for me, it's like I'm I'm with you, but I'm also glad he didn't. But at the same time, it's like I'm glad this injury happened on a Friday night because that gives us an extra game or an extra day between the next game
Got
to
an
get
extra
Malik
2.
Willis up to speed.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
because now
I
you have the Friday,
Saturday and
now you have
Sunday.
the Friday night to where you had that game. Now we got the Friday night and the Saturday and then game day. So you got an extra 2 days. So it's 9 days to hurry up and get Malik Willis caught up to speed. And damn well Jordan Love is helping out with that because that's Jordan. Like, he did a lot to help out Malik when he first got to Green Bay. He showed him around the camp. He showed him around Lambeau. He showed him around the Don Hudson Center, which is our practice center. Um, he's Jordan Love is like the ultimate teammate. And I know a lot of people say that about so many different players, but there's very few actual players in the NFL that are willing to do this, especially, guys that are as high a caliber as Jordan Love is when it comes to, salary. Because I don't want to say Jordan Love is like a high caliber quarterback because this is supposed to be his second full season as a starter. I don't want to toot his horn right now, but based on how he played at the end of last season and then how he played in the game last night, like, he's really starting to look like it. And to get Malik Willis up to speed like this as quickly as the Packers have to do it, I think that's really going to show a testament with the coaching. It's going to show big testament with Matt LaFleur and the offensive coordinator because, I mean, like we said, Malik Willis literally just came from the Titans a week ago.
Right.
So he's been with Tennessee his entire career. Now he's coming to Green Bay, a completely different system. And guess what, dude? Good luck. You've been here a week and now you're the starter. Don't
Right.
fuck us up.
And and for perspective too of why I said, you know, to capitalize on the front half of that schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say they sit him for 6 weeks, okay? So he misses the home game against the Colts, the road against the Titans, home against the home against the Vikings, at LA, home against the Cardinals, home against the Texans. Okay, so that's one, two, three, 4 home games that he
Yep.
would miss. Okay. And then when I talk about the back half of the schedule, Green Bay then, if he comes back after 6 weeks, is home against the Lions. They go to Chicago, uh, and then they're home against San Fran. Then they're home against Miami. Then they go to Detroit. They go to Seattle. Then they have New Orleans at home. Then they go to Minnesota, and then they're home against the Bears. That's a pretty tough back
Yeah.
half of the schedule. And, we don't know much about the Bears. It's easy to
Right.
rag on the Bears, but I mean, if the Bears put it together, the Packers and Lions, they both get the Bears late, both games late.
Yeah.
So if the Bears put it together, the Lions and Packers are going to run into a Bears team that's put it together. Now, if the Bears don't put it together, whatever. But those games, if the Bears put it together, could be tough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let alone when you have the Lions in there twice. You've got to go to Seattle. Luckily you get Miami at home in late November, but that back half because it's tough with a healthy Jordan Love. So you want to make sure in that front half that you grab the W's that you should grab.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so that if you do, stumble a bit in that tough stretch, that it's not quite as impactful. Um, and that's where, like, I don't want him to like tear his MCL. This is when you hope as a Packers fan that the organization holds him out until
Mm-hmm.
he's healthy and not because they're panicked about a playoff run. And that's the worry you have as a fan, so they're 0-1. Let's say they stumble against the Colts and they're 0-2. But then let's say after the LA game, they're sitting at 2-3 or 1-4. Do you rush Jordan Love back for the Cardinal game? Because you're worried about a playoff run. And then that's when you start worrying about that long-term health, if he's not ready. And that's my concern for, Jordan Love is getting rushed back into action quicker than he might need to be. Because,
Right.
we got to make that playoff run now. Um, And I don't know. Maybe, Corey, maybe it's because I'm a Lions fan, so I'm just used to not being good. Um, it's like one of those, like, if you're Green Bay and you're sitting at like 1-5, like,
Tank. Just tank.
right, like, don't rush him back. Like, a top 10 draft pick for a team like Green Bay could be franchise altering. Like, that's the thing with some of these teams that are good and they maybe suffer an injury, but rush a guy back to try to make that playoff run, even though they're
Right.
not going to win the Super Bowl because they're going to be like the 6th seed and have to play on the road the whole time, even though I know that's how Green Bay won the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
But like sometimes it's like, or maybe you get that top 10 pick to add to your team that can like shift your franchise from going from good to great because you got that unexpected high pick because of that injury. Um, because I think most fans agree the worst place to be is a football franchise is middle of the road.
Yep.
Like that's the worst place you can be. And so sometimes if you can catch that lucky break, or it's really a bad break where maybe you have to stink for a year, and you get that pick, might be worth it. Um, I look at this Green Bay team and go, you know, I didn't have them winning the division, but man, if Love misses 6 games and they really struggle, I think the worst thing for the North would be for Green Bay to somehow stumble into a top 10 pick. Um,
especially if they can stumble into that top five, because
yep.
then we're not talking Shedeur Sanders. No way.
No,
I
you're talking about draft capital.
Yeah. There's one you're talking well, yeah, like one you're talking about draft capital. The Packers could easily just drop back with 2 first-round picks, second or another one or two second-round picks. That's huge for a team like the Packers to where, especially on
Yeah.
the defensive side, like we're probably maybe one or two good defensive pieces away from having a solidly strong defense.
Because yeah, you're trading back with a bad team, who's likely going to be bad again, so that first rounder is higher. And then if
Yep.
there's a guy worth getting, you can package your own first rounder with that to move up to get whoever. And like you said, Green Bay, I think defensively is a cornerback away on defense from putting together a really good defense.
Yeah,
Um,
we definitely need somebody on the opposite side of Jair there. We don't need somebody to the caliber of like Jair, just somebody that can
no,
complement him very, very well. And we don't have
no,
that right now.
yeah, because they screwed that up when they passed on Cooper DeJean for an offensive tackle that was like a third round draft pick worthy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Um,
completely agree.
and I think offensively, this is a team that is an offensive lineman away from you know, putting it together. So, like you said, they're a couple pieces away. So, this Jordan Love injury, while it could impact Green Bay's playoff chances and what they could potentially do, could work out in their benefit long term, in terms of being able to draft if you look farther down the line. Um, and why I bring up that cornerback too is like Jair, I don't think Jair's there a whole lot longer as a number one cornerback for them either.
Hmm.
He's Jair's what, like 27, 28, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I know maybe people who don't know football, it's like, well, he's young. No, once he hits 30 at football age,
Yeah, that's
you
when the
know,
wheels start to
that's
fall
when the
off a
wheels
little bit.
start falling off for a lot of these guys you know, at cornerback, running back, in a sense, some receivers, depending on the kind of receiver they are. If it's a receiver that relies on speed, that's when you see that drop off, because your body just naturally gets older. So your speed lessens. Not saying he can't be a fantastic number two, but that's right around the age you see those guys diminish a little bit, and they go from being a lockdown one over to a number two, or into a slot position, and that's where that one piece on defense could be handy. So I think
Hmm.
it's going to be interesting for Green Bay because while it feels like the world is falling, I think there could be some pretty sunny days ahead if the world falls as hard as it feels like it might be falling for them right now. And maybe that's because I said I'm a Lions fan, so I'm just used to sucking and being like, oh, like we could package that first rounder and get more draft capital to address the 5,000 needs that we have. Um, but I know it's rare to be a team as bad as the Lions historically. So there's that. But Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, they have come and saved us. I hope.
Oh,
I
I
hope.
definitely think, the Lions are going to be good for quite a while because Dan Campbell, like we said on last week, I mean Dan Campbell's got that team ready to freaking commit genocide for that team.
Right.
Like that team will do anything for Dan Campbell and
Well,
anything for
and
the city of Detroit.
I think Brad Holmes kind of brings that different perspective. It's not really different. It's just an older school perspective to the draft too. Of going, like when they took Jahmyr Gibbs, and people were like, "Are you kidding me? They took Jahmyr Gibbs that high?" And going, "Well, we're drafting the best talent that's there, rather than trying to reach for a need." Because that's what
Hmm.
so many teams do now is they reach for a need.
Green Bay.
And and then you get yourself into precarious positions with your roster because you maybe took somebody mid first round that wasn't worth a mid first round pick, and
Yep.
now you're paying them a boatload of money in their rookie contract in year 3 and 4 and decline in fifth year because they're not worth the money because you could have waited and grabbed them early in round 2. And so I think that's what Brad Holmes is doing. It's bringing in just a fresh perspective and going, well, Jahmyr Gibbs is really good and he's like a top 10 talent. So why wouldn't we take him? Oh, well, that we have DeAndre Swift and David Montgomery. We'll just trade
Right.
DeAndre Swift, who's going to be a free agent in a year,
Yep.
and still have a two-headed monster at running back. And,
Exactly.
and then Jack Campbell, who was going anywhere from mid first round to mid second round and going, yeah, he's the kind of football player we want. So we're taking him, and we know
That's
that teams wanted him in late round 1, so we probably weren't going to get him. And talent wise, he's there, but because he plays Mike linebacker, you
right.
don't think we should take him this high, just like Jahmyr Gibbs being a running back. And I think that notion of you don't take certain positions in round 1 is silly, because when you have talent, who cares that you play Mike linebacker if you're good? Because I think we all know that people get hurt.
Yep.
And it's like same with running backs, like you can't have too many running backs. uh,
No.
they're always getting nicked up. You need them. You need that depth, and that's why I said this could benefit Green Bay. Um, it would be. I mean, Green Bay with a potentially having a top 10 pick is unheard of. So
Yeah, it's definitely something that we haven't seen from the Packers in almost 40 years.
it's yeah, it's insane. Because I know people think that Aaron Rodgers, they took Rodgers they early. They didn't. He
No,
fell
he dropped
to,
to the
I think they were like
26,
21st or something like that. 20.
26.
It's like they didn't get Aaron Rodgers and is like the fourth pick. He fell, and kudos to that team too. They were like, this is good talent. Sure, we have Brett Favre, but that talent's there. And then they did the same thing with Jordan Love too.
Hmm.
A guy that had first round talent that people were all over on where he might go, and Green Bay said, well, let's
Okay.
take him. I mean, oh well, if he has to sit for a few years. Um, but Favre was getting up there, Rodgers was getting up there. They saw an
Yep.
opportunity to get a first round talent at a position that people overdraft for, like they do.
Oh
Teams
God, yes.
overdraft quarterbacks. Um,
Teams reach so hard with quarterbacks, and
oh
that's
yeah,
one thing that I'm on with about Caleb Williams is he had so much hype for 3 years in college that he was going to be the number one draft pick in the draft when he comes out. Period. And it's like I don't see what everybody sees
his
because I
Heisman year
see,
was fantastic, but
yeah,
the bookend years, like the year at
they
Oklahoma,
were mid.
eh, and his last year at USC, he was actually not good. You
No, he
know,
was not. He was
I
pretty
mean,
terrible because
people
last
can,
season at USC, he played some pretty damn good defenses, and he looked terrible against those defenses,
yeah,
like pro level defenses.
turn the ball over, careless with his ball handling. He can't do that in the NFL, or they will
Oh
make
God,
him
no.
pay.
Yep.
And so like Caleb Williams, sure, first round talent, number one overall talent, but was he? Is he? I think when you look at tape, um, I think you look at Jaden Williams, and there's an argument that Jaden Williams easily could have been the number one overall pick there.
Hmm.
But I'll say this: the best player in the draft that was taken was Marvin Harrison Jr. And
Oh,
that's what I talk
without a
about
doubt.
over drafting quarterbacks. Like if you were the Chicago Bears, my dad is a Bears fan. Um, and like he's happy they have Caleb. You know, he's like, hey, they got Caleb in Rome. If you're Chicago there, how you do one of two things there, in my opinion. One is you trade back and you grab a bunch of draft capital because,
Yep.
contrary to popular belief, the Bears did not have a lot of draft capital. The draft capital they had was essentially from what they got from Carolina, which wasn't much,
Yep.
and a little bit of what they had. Like, because Carolina, yeah, they gave up two first rounders, but they gave up DJ Moore. You
Yep.
know, and that's why they didn't get a lot of draft capital in that trade with Bryce Young. But the Bears could have gotten a ton of draft capital, or I don't know, do the thing everybody had been saying and going, Justin Fields has anybody to throw to other than DJ Moore, and drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. And then you give Fields Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, I don't understand that thought process. And I mean, they must have just really given up on Fields. And then you still had the not number 9 pick that you could have either taken, the best player available, regardless of position, or maybe traded that back and gotten some draft capital out of it. But like they never gave Fields a chance to succeed, and they, in
They
my
really didn't.
position, overdrafted for a quarterback when the best player available was a wide receiver who they needed. Like they
Yeah.
needed. And they got
They needed.
really lucky that Roma Dunze was still there at 9.
Mm-hmm. Or else they would have been screwed.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if
So,
like looking at it now, I mean, I know everyone says 2020 is hindsight, but it's like looking at it as fans that are not Bears fans and just true football fans, it's like the Bears screwed Fields bad. They
yeah.
drafted him, immediately threw him to the fire, said, "Good luck, Rook," and then he was terrible. Why? Because he didn't have receivers, he didn't have a running back, he didn't have an offensive line, and his defense was shit. So they
Yeah.
blamed Fields.
Yeah. And look at how well they were playing once they traded for Montez Sweat, which was a sneaky good trade too. Like that
Hmm.
defense for Chicago really stiffened up at the end of the
Yeah.
year. And then when they added DJ Moore for the year, like Fields looked a bit better because he had a target to throw to. Still
Right.
had no running game, still had no O line, even though they'd been working on that O line a little bit. But now, I mean, and now Caleb Williams gets to go there, have DeAndre Swift in the backfield, who is a bit overrated because he's injury prone, but a better O line. And now he gets to throw to DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Romo Dunze. Like Justin Fields is like, what the hell, man?
Hmm.
Like, I mean, like he was throwing to Darnell Mooney for his number 1.
Oh, definitely. And
Like, come on, like, and I know they go like, oh, he wasn't improving with his progressions and all. He didn't have time to go through his progressions. Their O line was shit.
besides, like, what progressions? You have one receiver.
I
Like,
know.
it's hard to go through progressions when there's nobody open. And
And to
like you
be
said,
fair, he's a
like it's
good
hard to
runner.
go through progressions when you're running scared for, you know, 4 quarters of the entire game.
Right. And so it'll be interesting to see how he does in Pittsburgh.
Like,
Better O line there. Not the greatest of receivers, um, but at least he's got Najee Harris back there. So it'll be interesting to see what he does in Pittsburgh if he gets a chance. Um, I yeah, don't know what they're doing there in Pittsburgh. With it made sense when they signed Wilson for the 1 year, and then they trade for Fields, and you're like, okay, but then they decline the 5th-year option on Fields, so literally Pittsburgh could be walking into next season with no quarterback. Um, which I think says a lot for what we said last week about Tomlin and how we
mm-hmm.
think Tomlin might leave. But yeah, like that's what I don't. But when we talk about Green Bay and capital on what this could do for Green Bay, there's some teams that just don't. They just don't draft well. It's always been Detroit, clearly. That's why they always were
Yeah.
picking so high. I think that Green Bay has done so well at drafting that if the wheels were to fall off without Jordan Love and they land a top 10 draft pick, that could be a very, very scary thing for
Yeah, because for
the
me,
NFC.
I'm really, really thinking if the wheels do fall off, and let's say we do lose out and maybe just win one game while Love is out, I'm really, really, really liking the idea. Just tank. Tank as hard as you can possibly tank for
Yeah.
Travis Hunter.
I mean,
Just tank the hell out of the season
you know,
because,
we say they're winning that Titans game, but that's a road game. And, the Titans did improve that roster a bit. I still don't
yeah,
think they're
they're
going to be.
not bad at all with Will Levis. Like,
Yeah,
he's a pretty damn good quarterback.
he showed flashes last year. So I believe they beat Miami, right?
Right.
In Tennessee.
Hmm.
So it's like we have that as a win even without Love. But boy, if Malik Willis looks bad next week against the Colts, and Tennessee, comes out and looks decent this week, like, hmm, maybe
Yeah.
not. Like, maybe Tennessee can get that win, but I think that would be absolutely disastrous for Green Bay if they lose to the Colts and then lost to the Titans and started 0-3. I know it's a 17 game season now as opposed to 16, but that would be disastrous because they always had that old stat with the 16 game season of the
Right.
amount of teams that started 0-2 to make the playoffs was just it was almost insurmountable to start the season 0-2.
Right.
I mean, even with the 17th game, if they come out 0-3, that's a pretty big hurdle to get over if you're Green Bay. That 0-2 start isn't as big of a deal now with a 17 game season and that extra wild card spot, but 0-3, that could be really, really tough. Especially considering, I think going into the season you're expecting to get that Colts game and the Titans game, and now you're looking at the first part of that schedule. You were hoping like 5-2, and you're going shit.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can go 3-4. So
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that just kind of plays a lot more into what we were saying earlier too, was how quickly can Malik Willis get up to speed and how was he going to look? Because he had flashes of brilliance in Tennessee, but I think the Titans kind of just dropped the ball with him too there. So,
yeah,
I mean, in all honesty, we'll see how Willis plays with Love out. And I'm 100% on board with you. If the Packers do falter big time here, let's say Love is out for 6 weeks and we go 1-5 or 2-4 or something, I say to shut the season down, let him ride it out. Because I know we have a bye week on week 10.
yeah,
I get it. But at that point, even if we go into week 10 at,
4-5,
you know,
right?
right, at 4-5, you're looking at a wild card spot because I do not see the Lions being, 6-5 or whatever in that area. Or I don't see the Lions being like 7-3 or not 7-3. Shit, I don't see the Lions being like 6-5 or 5-6 or whatever in that area. I see them being more like 7-3, possibly 8-2. Because I mean,
Yeah,
like we talked about last week, like they did a lot to improve that defense, and that offense is scary.
yeah,
So it's like at this point, if we go into week 10, or even just if he is available to come out after week 6, and then you got to go to the Jacksonville, just sit him down, just be done, tank the season. This draft this or for next season is super heavily defense. So many stars on defense are going to be in the draft next season, and the big thing for me too is if you can tank hard enough, Travis Hunter's right there. Even if you don't want to play him on both sides of the ball,
I
because
know.
quite frankly, I don't think we have to. I think our receiving core is good enough as it is.
Oh, I don't think anybody's gonna do that in the NFL these days. And
No,
Travis Hunter is going to be that. Do you play him at receiver or defensive back? I know I have a friend who says that Travis Hunter is not an NFL wide receiver, and I am of the opinion that I think Travis Hunter would be a deadly slot receiver in the right offense,
yeah, because he's
which
big
I
and
got a
strong.
little pushback on, and I said, would you like to see Travis Hunter in Ben Johnson's offense as a slot receiver?
Right.
Oh my. Because look, like Amon Ra's not big. Amon Ra's not playing on the outside really either. Amon Ra's
Nope.
playing in the slot for Detroit. Like he's the one running the slant routes underneath. He's the one going over the middle. He's not the take the top off guy. He's not a big
Right.
dude. And so it's like, I mean, a Travis Hunter and a Ben Johnson offense would be scary.
Yeah, because he's
And
got
so
that speed, he's got
and
that strength. He can do it all, and he's got the height.
Yeah, and so it's like Travis Hunter, like in the right offensive system, is an NFL wide receiver 100%. I
Oh
just
God,
think it's who
yes.
takes him, and then that's going to be where does he play? And honestly, who like he might do a Lamar. Remember Lamar Jackson coming out of college? It was, is he an NFL quarterback or is he a receiver or running back? And he said,
Right.
I'm a quarterback and I'm not doing any drills. It's possible Travis Hunter says, I'm a wide receiver. I'm not playing
Yep.
defense. And so whoever takes him is going to know that. Or vice
Yep.
versa. He goes, I'm playing DB. Um, so that's another thing to consider too with Travis Hunter is, does Travis Hunter go into the draft saying, this is what I'm playing? And what does that then mean? Because that's what Lamar did. He's like, I'm an NFL quarterback. Uh, and then he's won 2 MVPs.
No, exactly. And I think that's like the huge thing too, because like Travis Hunter's got that speed and agility to where if you did want to play him at receiver or DB, got a hell of a kick returner right there too. He's
Yep.
damn dangerous in college. And I
Especially with
understand like the
kickoff rules
college
now.
game is very different, but he's playing up there at altitude, both sides of the ball at a mile high. So he's going to have that stamina to be able to, you know, be out there all the damn time on either offense or defense. Because, like you said, we both know he's not going to play both sides of the ball in the NFL. The
No,
teams aren't stupid enough to do that.
no,
You will
too
kill
physical.
him.
Yeah.
But he is definitely strong enough, smart enough, and like his stamina is so damn good. He could easily play 100% of the downs on either side of the ball and then return kicks at the same time.
Uh huh.
And that's going to put a lot of play into any team's hands, especially if, like I'm saying, like if Green Bay tanks, if things fall
Yep.
apart for them, if the Packers can somehow just fall down there into like the top 10, close to top 5, and then potentially trade up a little bit for Travis Hunter because I
Yeah.
truly feel like Travis Hunter is probably going to be the second or third guy to go. And I think Shador is going to be number 1.
I think I think it depends on who's picking first, but I think right now I look at it and I say it's going to be Quinn Ewers or Shador, depending on who the team is.
Yeah.
I think they're 1A and 2A. I
Yep.
think Travis Hunter, I think the ceiling for him is at 3. Depending on who's picking, I look at a Jackson Dart at Ole Miss potentially being in that number 3 spot, that or a
Mhm.
Travis Hunter. I think that's your top 4 because everybody overdrafts quarterbacks, right? So,
Yep.
regardless of the talent, Travis Hunter's probably the best talent in the draft from what we see today. Um, and I watched the start of the Colorado game, and you go, man, somebody might take Shador number 1, and
He is not looking good at
not
all.
looking good. But
So
you
I
know
think
he plays
Quinn Ewers'
quarterback.
draft capital is skyrocketing.
Quinn Ewers made NFL throws today.
Oh God, yes.
Um,
He was not rattled at
his
all.
footwork was his foot. The touchdown throw before half. Um, that was an NFL touchdown throw. And I know some
Hmm.
people go like, but it seems so simple because he made it look simple. His body, how he got his body positioned, his footwork, and the ball placement on that throw was NFL. It had
Yep.
NFL all over it. Um, if I'm drafting number one, from what I see at quarterback, I would go Quinn Ewers right now.
Yeah.
Um, I think Shador, I think, probably has a higher ceiling because of his mobility. But when I look at a quarterback that's polished, Quinn Ewers is way more polished than Shador.
Oh
Um,
God, yeah. Because
but
Shador, you can tell that he gets rattled pretty easily. His
yeah,
ego is just like Dion's, except for the fact that Dion, you could not shake Dion.
right.
Like his ego was so far beyond anybody else's that you could not rattle him. But Shador, I mean, look at him against freaking Nebraska. I mean, we both know Nebraska's not going to be a joke of a team this year. They're going to be pretty good. They
Yeah,
might end up competing for the Big Ten title this year with how they're playing.
it's
Might.
possible. They look pretty good right now. I
They
mean,
do look really good. And it
um,
sucks to say because, damn it, I don't want to say that.
I
But
know. But yeah,
for like
it'll
Shador, it's
be
like he gets rattled so easily. And in the NFL, you cannot have a quarterback that gets rattled.
I know, and it'll be interesting. So here's a team that might be picking first in the draft. And tell me if organizationally nothing changes, because I don't think it would, who you think they would take if they take yours or Sanders? The New York Giants.
I think they're probably stupid enough to take Shador.
Because I don't think organizationally they would change anything because Dable and Schoen haven't been there that long. It's only been 2 years, you know.
Right.
But I agree that New York Lights, they always get caught up of like, God, we're in New York. We need to get that flashy name.
They
Um,
just get caught up in the hype too much. Because
and so
the
then
hype was there for Daniel Jones too, and they ate it up. And it's like, dude, what are you doing?
I know. Because yeah, I think that's an organization that might be picking number one in the draft is
Them
the
or the Patriots?
Giants. I don't, and the Patriot. Okay, the
The
Patriots, if
Patriots, I can
they're
see them
trading.
taking Quinn Ewers.
No, they're trading. They drafted Drake May. They're sitting him. Holy crap, we're sitting a rookie. The Patriots, I think,
They'll
if they're
probably
number one, they're trading back,
they'll either
or
trade back or go defense.
they would take Travis Hunter one.
Yeah,
They very well would, but I think they would be smart enough to see the value in that trade back at one in the draft capital that they could get. I know Belichick isn't there, folks, but let's just pretend that Gerard Mayo, has that same mindset. Robert Kraft is still the owner. They're going to see that value. They got a lot of holes on that team to fill anyway.
God, yes.
So you
That
take
entire team
advantage.
as a whole.
Yeah, you take advantage of that and get that draft capital. But you're right, New York and New England are two teams that are pretty much going to be competing for that number one spot. Carolina, they're going to be in that mix as well. They're going to be
I think the
slightly
Cardinals
better,
might
but
be as well too.
I
I
don't
don't really
know.
see.
Kyler's back. We'll see.
Yeah, but there's a new Call of Duty that's coming out, so
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
we
not.
all know how he is when Call of Duty drops a
I'm
new
not.
game. So
I'm not convinced that they're behind Kyler either.
me neither.
Um,
I think if
Color.
they come if they get a chance at Quinn Ewers, Kyler's gone. He's done.
I think. I think Arizona will be accidentally good enough to be like seventh.
Yeah.
um, but I think a team that we could be looking at up there that the Saints would be a team I think who could be picking in the top five. With the Derek Carr experiments backfired. Dennis
Mm-hmm.
Allen is a terrible head coach. They're in they're in cap hell, and they have been for the better part of a decade. It might just be time where they blow that stuff up
And they're
and
still
start
paying Michael Thomas to
over.
sit on his ass because he hurt his toe a couple years ago.
Yeah. Um, another team that might be up there who has to pick between Ewers and Shador, very well could be, uh, you know, depending on how things go in Vegas. I
Mm-hmm.
know we talked about them and how they could be sneaky good, but when you talk about teams that could be sneaky good, that means they could be sneaky bad.
Yeah.
But the
Because we've been saying that about the Raiders for the last 3, 4 years, and it's like, dude, I don't know, dude. The Raiders could be sneaky good, and then here they
yeah,
are, week 10,
they
and they're 2-8.
yeah, and it's possible they could be sneaky good. Like they've got a good defense there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got talent on the offensive side of the ball for the most part, but it all comes down to that quarterback play. And they are looking at Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, and um, who knows
I
how that
still think
goes.
Gardner's gonna be the guy to be there because I
I do too.
I am 100% on the Gardner Minshew train because I've seen what he can do when he's actually got an O line that can block for him and weapons. He's got an O line that can block for him. He's got weapons. I think he's gonna light it up in Vegas.
And I'm still in that camp too, Corey. And I think Dallas mortgages everything and they go grab Shador or Quinn. Um, the entire state of Texas might have like an orgasm if Dallas were to get Quinn Ewers. Um,
Or
like you would
Shador.
just see like all of a
Yeah,
sudden, like from space, it's like, whoa, what's that big white blur thing that just happened?
I know, right?
Um, and it would be
Oh God, what's all
Texas.
that white stuff from the United States?
It's the Texas blowing their load, because Quinn Ewers is a Cowboy, or they went and got Shador. And I
And that
still
means that
think
Dion's going to be their next head coach.
right, and I don't think it's because Dallas is picking up high. I think Dallas is still going to have a good year, but I think Dak not being under contract, Dallas is in that position to franchise Dak, trade him for whatever, and mortgage their draft capital to go get their rookie contract future guy. Then they can keep Parsons. They've kept CD Lamb. They can re-sign some other guys on that defense,
Hmm.
and they can make their run with a quarterback on a rookie contract. And then when the rookie contract is up, you're not going to pay CD Lamb that kind of money anymore. You're going to have other guys that you're not going to pay that kind of money for, and you have regained your draft capital again to, try to piece together a team there. I think, Dallas is that team to look for, and it's kind of one of those too. Like, I'm not saying Dallas goes up to one, but they might go up
No.
to two and say, I'll let that team pick and I'll take the other. Because then it's like the Manning Leaf thing, right? Do you take Manning? Do you take Leaf?
Hmm.
And everybody shits on the Chargers because they got Leaf, but at least the Chargers at that point can be like, well, we didn't pass on Manning.
Right.
It's the scapegoat excuse of, well, Peyton was already taken. We just took the next one. And I
Right.
think that's what Dallas would probably do is they would trade up and just take the next one so that they, didn't have to deal with any blowback of, I can't believe you didn't take that guy. Well, that guy wasn't there. So,
Well, I think the only blowback that'll happen is if they do take Shador and he is god awful. I think that'd be the only blowback. But
well, it'd be more if they took Shadur and hired Dion.
which I honestly think is going to happen anyways.
Uh, I, I would put it as a strong likelihood, Corey.
Yeah, I 100% think it's going to happen because Shiloh, he's not going to get drafted. He is not a good D back. He gets
Um,
he gets burnt a lot.
They would totally draft him in the 7th round.
Yeah, they would.
Um,
Hell, they'd probably do it in the second round because this frickin' Jerry Jones, he's a dumbass.
so because if you look at that Colorado team, who are their three? Who are their three dudes? Just their three dudes on offense, right? Because they don't appear to have a dude on defense. Their three dudes are Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter,
Mm-hmm.
and Jimmy Horn Jr.
Yep.
You know what those three all are? Seniors.
Yep.
They're all seniors. Two of them are first round draft picks. I think Jimmy Horn Jr. is sneaky ass good.
Oh,
He's
he
just
is.
overshadowed by Hunter,
Yeah.
but he's quick, dude. And he's a dude. He's getting drafted. I mean,
Yeah, he's gonna
so
get drafted like surprisingly high. I don't think it'll be first round, but I bet it'll probably be
he's a mid
early
two.
to mid second.
Yeah. Um, so when they always talk about Dion and he's committed to Colorado,
No, he's
man,
not.
he his dudes are gone after this year. He jumped up from Jacksonville State to Colorado looking for a quick hit, you know, surprise type 2 seasons to go on to bigger and better. It didn't work out in year one. Started out well, but ultimately didn't work out. And
And it's
then
clearly not gonna work this season either.
and clearly not going to work this season. But it is Dion, which comes with hype and attention, and that's where I still think, I think he's still gonna he's gonna be gone when those guys leave this year, and it's just a matter of, is it a college gig or does he go to the NFL? And that's when once again you come to the Cowboys, right? He played
Mm-hmm.
there. Jerry Jones eats that shit up, so I just I don't see him staying in Colorado like people think. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't either. And I just think there's just so much that can happen. And oh man, this season is gonna have me on pins and needles because if there's a lot more games like in the NFL that have been the way that these last two nights have been, and man, there's so much that's going to be shaken up this season, and
Mm-hmm.
I would not be surprised if we see some teams that are like that just surprise the hell out of us, and it's like, what the hell? Where did they come from? How did they make the playoffs?
Yeah, you mean you always get a team or two like that every year.
Yeah.
The Texans were the AFC. Like what? I would even say the Browns, even though the Browns, they're decent, but they just always seem
Hmm.
to be right on the opposite side. And then in the NFC, you're like Tampa, really? Like with
Hmm.
Baker Mayfield, like that guy. That was they were surprised. I think Green Bay was a little bit of a surprise, I think, to people because nobody knew what to think of Love.
Right.
Right. But everybody, like on paper, it was always one of those. It's kind of what we're saying about Chicago right now.
Hmm.
On paper, last year, you looked at Green Bay and you said, on paper, they have a good roster. We don't know anything about their quarterback. That's Chicago right now, too. On
Yeah.
paper, they got a hell of a good roster. Arguably maybe the best three receivers in the NFC North.
Yeah.
Um, and you just don't know about the quarterback. So, Green Bay was maybe a little bit of a surprise. Because I think people were expecting Seattle to be what they were the year before, and Gino took that step back. Um, which I don't think anybody should have been overly surprised about. Um,
Right.
but I think so. I think yeah, you're gonna see that this year, where there's gonna be a team that we didn't talk about, unless it's the Colts, and I talked about them, making the playoffs. So it'll be interesting and fun to see, um, because I think the talent in the NFL is getting so much better. in terms of being spread out, which I know some people hate parity, and I'm kind of in that boat. I hate parity for the sake of parity. Like, I'm not one to be like, I just want all of these teams to be equally good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want parity for the sake of that. But for when there's parity because teams are constructing rosters to create the parity, I'm okay with that. And I look at the NFL right now and go, yeah, there's some teams that I think are head and shoulders better than everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but damn, there's some pretty good football teams out there that are gonna go like 7 and 10. Like,
Oh God, yeah.
uh, and I know everybody, like, oh, who do you think's heading better? I honestly do not think the Kansas City Chiefs are head and shoulders better than everybody.
No,
I think that is
not
a
even
team
close.
that has a lot of things bounce their way, and I don't even mean officiating because we can talk about that.
Oh yeah, we
Um,
can. We could have like a 5-hour special on that because
but
wow.
but they just have things that seem to bounce their way in terms of, oh, that pass got deflected, but they still
Oh
caught it.
man, it's
You
right
know,
into Travis Kelce's hands and he's still running. Shit.
yeah, and then you know, and Kelsey's getting up there, and you go, that's a weapon that's going to be hard to replace for them because of what he does for that team, which then makes it easier
Yeah,
to cover receivers.
his field,
Um,
uh, his vision of the field is second to none. Like he always seems to find the wide open empty space and
yep,
somehow just gets into that space with nobody around him. And it's like, dude,
yeah,
how the hell does he always do this, dude? Then you
yeah,
go back and watch the replay and it's like, dude, he's literally running around with his head cut off and then next thing you know, it's like, oh shit, I'm wide open.
yeah.
Touchdown.
But like the Chiefs, they are one of the teams that are a step above others.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of I think when you look at the NFL outside of like I think Kansas City. I think you look at Baltimore, Cincinnati, and San Francisco. I think those are the teams you go, yeah, those are the kind of the four. And then I think when you go like five on down, like I think you can go like five down to like 15 and go a bounce and kick one way could shift how these teams finish. And like I think Detroit's going to be a pretty dang good football team, but they're a team though that could be a bounce and a kick away that goes from 12-5 to 10-7,
Yep.
which means a division championship and a home guaranteed home game to a wild card berth and most likely no home playoff game. Um, and I think Green Bay is in that 5-15 range. Philly, Dallas,
Yeah.
Cleveland, the Jets, Miami, like those teams, there's just not a lot that separates them other than health and bounce one way or the other.
Mhm.
So
But uh before I uh before I kill this off, any predictions on how you think the love situation is going to go?
I think Jordan Love misses the full six. Um, I know they're hopeful for 3 to 4. I think he sits the full six in Green Bay, plays it smart to keep him out until he's fully healthy.
Hmm.
I think they will be sitting because they would be 7 games deep. So I honestly think what they're going to be sitting at that point is 3-4.
I could do with that. I might be a little upset about it, but I'd be hoping for 5-2, but we all know that ain't gonna happen.
Right.
But for me, I think he will probably be quote unquote ready to play week 4, but LaFleur will keep him out another week or two. So I think I'm on the same side as you are. He'll sit out the full 6 and return on the road against Jacksonville, which might be a terrible idea because Jacksonville's front 7's pretty wicked.
Yeah.
That's just, they have a pretty bad secondary. But I think best case scenario, the Packers can be 4-3, but I wholeheartedly think we're going to be 2-5.
Yeah, I think best case is 4-3. I think they're going to be able to. I think they're going to get that win against the Titans.
Yeah.
I think they're going to get the Cardinals win, and I think they're going to pull something off against Minnesota somehow, some way. Because Sam Darnold's still the quarterback there.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm hoping, because I'm really, really hoping that we're not going to have like a Sam Bradford deal to where, he looks like his career is about over, and next thing you know, he goes to Minnesota and starts lighting it up, and it's like, oh my God, come on. You were terrible last year. Why?
Yeah, that's the 3 wins I have you guys getting going into the Jacksonville game if he sits the full 6. I think those are the ones you get.
Yeah, for me, my the 2 wins I've got is Minnesota and Arizona. I have us losing a very tight one to Tennessee.
Okay.
So we will see, and I will chat with you tomorrow about college
Sounds
games
good.
today, a little bit of NFL, and we got
Well,
pennant race
baseball.
coming up.
Yeah, some baseball talk too. Be a good time.
Hell yeah. All
All
right,
right,
man. I
man.
will see you tomorrow. Have a good
Sounds
one.
good.